There was a crisis team call pretty early in the morning to come to the alumni conference room, which is where we convene at the high school. And so when I came in, I said, "What happened? What's going on?" And everybody sat silent and just looked at me. And it felt like it took everything for the assistant principal to just say it. And when he said it, it kind of hit me in a way that I couldn't hear it. I remember it just being really, I said, "Oh, no." And then it was just really devastating. It was hard.
So I had him in a first period class, and that day he was absent. And second period, our assistant principal came up and pulled me into the hall and told me. And this class that was in here at that time were all friends, same grade level, same type class that he was in first period, advanced 9th grade English. And I knew there were lots of friends in there. And when it was loud, I broke down. It was a loud scene in the hall. So then I had to come back in, and we told these kids.
My son was Reed Christian Adler, and he was the victim of cyberbullying and intimidation from one student, a fellow student of his, that led him to make the decision to take his own life based upon a mistake that he made. And the struggle that we've had with that over the years is we all make mistakes, and no mistake is so big that we can't wrap our arms around it and learn from the mistake and take that learning forward.
What happened with Reed was probably one of the most devastating days of DJing my life, probably. I think because Reed occupied the same breath and the same space and the same air that I did. He reminded me a lot of my son. So that was painful to digest.
Unfortunately, Reed used a permanent solution for a temporary situation. And he's changed the landscape of our family, our community, and our school forever. And I wished that he didn't take that impulse decision, but we can't go back.
I think from that moment on, always wanted to create an environment where my students will always know I love them. And it's hard because there are some students who, no matter how many times you are real with them and you prove that you're willing to do anything to help them and you're an advocate for them, they will disappoint you, they will hurt you, they will lash out at you. And we always say we just love them harder. We just love them harder.
What's up, Danny? What's up, man? Okay, yes. Hey, Haley. Yep, got it. You do? You don't?
I'm very grateful that cell phones, electronics, the internet, social media wasn't there when I was growing up. I'm not sure if my path would be the same.
Raise your hand if you have a phone.
how old were you when you got a phone?
I was in 4th grade when I got a phone.
I think it was my 8th grade year. It was right between the 2 semesters. I got it for my birthday. It was after much complaining.
For today's kids, that phone and the social connectivity that comes along with it is almost a necessity to them. And many times, even with my own child, I have a 15-year-old boy and an 11-year-old boy, and even with them, they would take any punishment that I would give them as long as I didn't take their phone away.
What is the longest period of time that you have gone since you've been in middle school without having a phone, an iPad, a laptop?
Like,
including the weekends and...
5 days?
5 days. And how was that for you?
It was pretty easy.
Okay. What about you?
An hour.
An hour's the longest you've ever gone?
Yes.
When I was in 3rd grade, I would play on the playground and I would talk to kids and I would go on play dates. But now kids have these brand new iPhones. They're just scrolling through social media, using TikTok or whatever the new thing is now. I just don't think it's good mentally for them or physically as well, you know?
Back in middle school, I had 3 Instagram accounts. Two of them I still have. One of them I just deleted because that one I was just kind of ashamed of, honestly. And that was the one I deleted was my very first Instagram account. And when I posted my very first picture, I started getting followers and likes. And I was just like, oh my gosh, that feels really good. And so on the next one, I just put on some hashtags follow for follow and those cringy hashtags, and it felt really good just getting more likes and more followers.
Social media is a very complicated topic. The biggest problem is that it's happening right now in front of us. We didn't even know what this was 10, 20 years ago. We're starting to see that certain trends are becoming viable for us to recognize. Specifically, there are advantages to social media, both in terms of connecting with people and learning about things.
I see us, as a complete generation, being more connected than any other generation before. Since we have our phones and everything, and since we're on technology and things like that let us talk to people all day, we're more connected with people that are outside our own little circles, and we get to learn about other people's experiences, other people's views on things without having to physically meet them. And I think there's a lot of benefits to that as opposed to just having the physical interactions, which would be your little small circle that you normally have.
Unfortunately, the downside that we're starting to see is too often kids identify their what kind of person they are by how they're perceived. And so concretely, a big issue that we see right now with kids is they gauge their life by the number of likes that they get on social media sites.
When I was in middle school, I started a few fan pages for a few pop culture things that I was really into at that time. It became sort of my life. And so all I would think about was what am I gonna post next? How many likes am I getting? I felt as though if I didn't post for a day or interact on the internet for a day, I would lose everything. And it became a very kind of, in my opinion, unhealthy obsession. And so I started to realize that oh wait, I'm literally living on my phone all the time. I get home and literally all I see is screen. It's hurting my eyes. I can't focus anymore.
We've all talked about it, seen the posts about, the presentation of your online life is always so much better than the reality of it.
So you're flipping through Instagram and you're seeing, all your friends, especially over Christmas vacation and summer vacation, you're like, look where they are. They're in Fiji, or they're at the zoo, or they're at a sleepover, or they're at this, or they're at that.
They could just be there. It could just be a fake photo and be someone from the internet. Or it could just be them going to the zoo once in a year.
For adults, sometimes it's even hard to get that perspective. Well, when you're on that roller coaster of adolescence, there's no perspective a lot of times. And everybody's life seems better. Everything seems better.
The pressure to be perfect is really hard.
And who sets that bar for perfect? Like, how do you know if you've achieved it?
It like goes down a chain. It's like, you know, you got like your Kardashian level of like high-end superstar, like this is what it's like, and then it trickles down to like in your area, like who's really popular, and then you have, you know, like that one really popular girl at school that has like 2,000-3,000 followers and everyone wants to be like her, and then like that's the standard for your school.
Well, there's no denying the social media aspect and how that has influenced the mental health of kids and has exacerbated the reactions and yeah, you break up with a boyfriend or something happens and you can't get away from it.
Good morning, people. Good morning. How we doing today? Great. Good. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to continue our discussion. When I first started teaching, come in, students, open your books, let's learn. And the student was more engaged and they were more focused. Now they want to be entertained, which is fun. But it chips away at, I think, you know, that content learning because you're competing against the phone.
Good. If they side with one another, what group said this one? Okay, can you tell me a little bit about what you meant?
Some of the things that I'm seeing just day to day are social media being paramount. I mean, we have kids coming in that are being bullied on social media. We have kids that are saying things on social media that they won't say face-to-face with their friends. When we get them into mediation, they can have a good conversation and come to an agreement. But when they're on social media, the things they say are horrific. When we read them back to them, sometimes they can't believe they said those things because they're so mean and horrible.
Have you ever been hurt by something you've seen on social media?
I think that everyone has been hurt by something that they've seen on social media.
Just not everybody necessarily speaks up about it or like says that it hurt them. We do a really good job of just, because it's easier to just swipe past something than to type something out instead of like what my grandma would do is she'd go on there and type a paragraph of how she feels, and then all these people are commenting about how they don't agree with her or they do. We do a lot better job of just swiping past.
You swipe past it, but does that swipe the feeling away?
No.
You have a bad day, you post about it, or someone like really like made you mad, you post about it, and then if you're that person, you see it, and I don't know, it hurts. And like you said, you can swipe past it, but you still kind of sit on it and you think, oh, well, I don't know what I did to make this person so mad, and I mean, it always hurts, no matter what.
We've also seen, unfortunately, a linear relationship with the amount of time that people spend on social media and their inclination to feel despondent, depressed, and anxious. So the more time you spend, the more likely you are to feel discouraged and negative about things.
Well, anytime you're dealing with a population of people, and certainly teenagers, you're dealing with all sorts of levels of mental health, qualities of mental health. And I think for me, in an English classroom, especially where there's a lot of writing and where there's opportunities to share things and to explore things, I think we have an insight into kids' mental health status and what children share, what they experience, and the challenges as a teacher has changed a lot in the 32 years because of that.
Some of the things that I deal with on a daily basis are students who are writing about killing themselves.
So what happens when they do things like fail a test, they are absolutely, unabashedly, like, devastated, as if everything, I mean, we're talking about kids that have taken high-level classes all the way through. They take an AP Calc class and they fail their first test. I realize it's a little devastating, but the level of devastation is a lot higher than we've seen before. I mean, they go straight to, I want to kill myself. You know, it's just a test.
I think that the romanticization of mental illness on social media is making our discussion of mental illness itself, like depression, a lot less serious. We see that in social media when people like joke about suicide whenever they're like sad. So like they call themselves depressed even though they're sad for like a few days. So I think that calling that depression, first of all, is an appropriation of what depression actually is. And then further in our memes or entertaining little posts that are meant to make us laugh, we see one negative thing happen to a person in that post, and then that person will say, I want to die. And so that takes away the seriousness of the issue of suicide and mental illness in our culture. And I think that's part of the reasons why it's getting worse, because it's not a serious thing anymore, it's a joke.
I think the hardest part of it is, it's a horrible thing, but so many people just joke about it. Like, oh, I failed the test, oh, that's it, guys, I'm going home and I'm doing it. Like, it's so hard to discern when it's true and when it's not. And then when it is genuine, it's, okay, do I talk to them? Do I talk to the counselor? Like, are they gonna be mad at me if I talk to someone about this? It's just so hard, especially because, people don't like to talk about it.
And people are probably like embarrassed to talk about it.
And when you say it, are you talking about suicide or depression or what?
Yeah, all of it.
All of it, yeah.
We can't talk about our feelings?
You get kind of ridiculed for talking about your feelings because people we don't care.
You're supposed to be happy. That's the picture. So.
And that's what society expects?
Yeah.
What about your parents?
That's
a whole nother thing.
Yeah. It's like my mom, like, she tells me, it's okay, we can talk about things. And then the first sign of me, like, being sad, it's like, oh, what's wrong? Like, we need to get you out of this. Like, it's just hard for people to understand. Sometimes you're just not okay, and that's not a bad thing. You'll get through it, but you don't always have to be happy.
Sometimes parents or adults or anyone that you're talking to, it can be a big deal to you, but when you say it out loud, it sounds dumb, and it might sound dumb to them or like small. So you just kind of hide it. So then, because that's like another way that it's embarrassing. Like, it's a big deal to you, but it's not to anyone else.
And like with the embarrassing part, I feel like it's embarrassing to ask for help.
Yeah.
Is the biggest thing with us is, I don't know, we feel like even when you have a question with math, you're like, do I go up to the teacher or do I just sit here and try to figure it out myself? Yeah.
Asking.
So when it comes to something much bigger than like a math problem, it's kind of embarrassing to ask for help.
It's difficult for kids. It's difficult for kids right now. They have a lot more pressure, a lot more on their plate, a lot more expectation than maybe we had when we were younger.
It's 4 years of probably one of the roughest parts of your life where you feel like you want to conform, but you don't want to conform because you don't want to be a conformist, but you do. You want to be loved, you want to be liked, and you're trying to work through the social part as well as your body is changing.
Trying to figure out who you are.
You're trying to figure out who you are. It's huge.
Yeah.
And then they're plopped into your classroom, and I'm going to teach you some dates and some times and some people, and I want you to care about it. That's a joke. That's a joke.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't teach them unless you know them.
The front part of the brain, the part that you're using to like make sense out of things, yeah, that kind of gets turned down when you go into adolescence. They turn up the emotional part of their brain. It's called the amygdala. But the point of the story is, so basically you're speaking German when you talk to adults and you're speaking to someone who speaks French around the kids. Everything they process through this emotional channel. And so you would go, well, that doesn't make any sense. Why would kids do that at this age? Well, their job from time immemorial to this moment is to look up when they're about 12 to 20 and start going, yeah, this person's attractive. Yeah, that person's attractive. And so it's not built on, well, rationally, this would be a good mate for me. This is a person who has the right kind of personality, and yeah, I think they look good. Our kids would be able to play sports, and she likes music. They don't think like that. It's like, oh, they're hot, so they get attracted, so they can do the really developmentally difficult job of separating from their parents as they affix to their peers and other people that they're attracted to. So this emotional part, first off, makes it very hard to have a conversation because it's like frontal lobe, amygdala.
Teens, in general, tend to isolate.
Every day my mom would be like, come watch this movie with me. And like me being a teenager, I just want to sit in my bed and be on my phone. And like, I feel horrible for it, but like, it's just something that I enjoy.
But it's hard for parents to know, is this depression? Not participating in the family, not going outside of the house, being on your phone all the time, in your room all the time, or is that just being a teen?
Our next guest, Dr. Mark and Joni Adler. Dr. Adler is the superintendent for Ralston Public Schools. He and his wife are leaders in the community, and they have been touched by this topic of bullying in a profound way. And I would like to let them tell you about Reed and Reed's story. Please help me welcome Dr.
So Reed was an awesome kid. He was an athlete, he was smart, he was a great kid, but Reed wasn't perfect. And what we didn't know was, when Reed was in middle school, he took a picture of himself that was inappropriate of his midsection. Didn't show his face, any part of his body, but did show his midsection with no clothes on. He shared that with a girl. We think for 9 or 10 months, that girl held that over Reed's head. If you don't do this or this, I'm gonna share this out on social media. I know this will embarrass you. And we feel like what happened, and we've had to piece this together, and it's taken a while. We feel like Reed had had enough. I'm not gonna do this anymore. I'm not going to continue to let you harass me. And so we think he quit communicating with her and said, I'm not gonna communicate with you anymore, and it made her mad. And on January 6th, she held up her end of the deal, and she shared it on social media. She shared that picture of Reed on a website called Omaha Purge, and then it all went from there. Earlier that night, Reed finished his homework, and Reed was a great kid, but he also was a kid that, you know, if he was not going to school the next day, I'll guarantee he's not going to be doing his homework. So he kind of went by the seat of his pants on some of that stuff, but he had finished all his homework, and that's when we think this was an impulse decision. That what happened that night was Reed's worst nightmare came true. She posted that, and he didn't know what to do. And so his answer was he would just take his own life. There's very few things that don't get captured, you know, with a video or a picture, and then that comes back around, and it's that constant reminder, if it isn't a positive thing, of what's not right with you.
We had no idea this was going on with all these kids, and it wasn't just him. But we had no idea these kids were being tortured like this. Now at least we do. Now at least, for the most part, we get kids that come in and say, hey, this girl's doing this to me on social media.
Do you know if any of your friends have been asked to send inappropriate photos?
Yeah, I used to live in Lincoln, and there was this girl that her pictures and videos and stuff like got sent out to everybody, and then she like didn't come to school for a while. So.
Do you know why she would have taken inappropriate videos?
No. I mean, people ask probably.
I had a friend that happened to too. She came to dance crying one time, and I sat her down and we're like, "What's wrong?" She's like, "He said if I break up with him, he's gonna release my news to the entire school." And it was a moment of she did it because she thought she needed to, because a lot of kids think that's
pressure.
Yeah, that's a big part of relationships. That's just what you do. If that stuff gets out, it's really hard to gain people's respect back.
There's a part of the brain, the ventral striatum, that gets activated during adolescence again so that you can kind of join your group, your peer group, and do stuff with them as you separate from your family. But that means that kids will do stupid, crazy stuff when they're 12 to about 25 or so, that they look up at the end of that time and go, "No, I'm not doing that," no matter what other people would encourage them to do. So they're just more vulnerable during that time.
Is there perhaps a time in your life when social media is really important and then you kind of grow out of it?
As you mature, or at least for me, as I've matured and become more comfortable with myself, I feel less of an urge to get validation from social media.
And I think also in this sort of a situation, we're being interviewed, we have cameras on us, not to break the fourth wall or anything. We have peers around us, so we're not going to say all the bad things we do, right? It's there are definitely things about my usage of social media where sometimes I can get caught up in a lot of things, or I spend way too much time on it. But I'm not gonna say that here, even though I just did say that. But I think we try and make ourselves look good in real life and online and just be no, that's not me. Those are the other teenagers you've been hearing about.
The notion that kids will be kids, boys will be boys, girls will be girls. This is just the new, fight on the playground type of thing. I would push back on that, and I would say, no. The amount of exposure that students see of violence and manipulation and just things that I was never exposed to. We were never exposed to.
When kids are dealing with that constant need to impress people on social media, that constant need to be liked on social media and to not be attacked on social media, they never get away from it. At least we got away from it. We were able to go home and have a breather from all of that day-to-day stuff, but these kids don't. They go home and it's constant, it's still there, it's always there. It never goes away, they never turn it off. And that's gonna wear on you. That's gonna wear on anybody. That would wear on an adult.
Sounds like there's a lot of pressure on you guys. Do you feel that?
Yeah.